asset security and how to protect them. This is a pretty interesting set of common body of knowledge that ISC2 wants you to know. And while we're doing this, I think it's important for you as the upcoming test taker to understand some of the logistics that you're going to see on the exam. So let's take a look at these slides here. Stand by. So let's first try to quantify or maybe just figure out why we need to think about this. There's 3 case studies or stories that could be meaningful for our conversation right here. Some of them are a little bit older, but I think still quite meaningful. So think about this. With asset security, it really depends on what you're trying to protect and what level of confidence you have in the protection mechanisms to do just that. And so there's 3 examples here. The Snowden, since then they've done a movie on that, the Equifax data breach, and then this thing down here called the Cambridge Analytica scandal. The first one here, the Snowden. So yeah, he used to work as an analyst for the NSA. Apparently, or allegedly, he was fed up with the way that he saw the government was overreaching, and decided to be a whistleblower. And since then, I think that more information has come out about this, but there was a while there, if I recall correctly, that he was in another country, and I think that they went and got him in another country. But in that particular case, that what was the asset that he had? Yeah. So at what point does it become treason? Immediately when you start to bark at this. But yeah, I agree. Whistleblower or spy, I guess that's the question. But for him, data was his literally his gold that he had from the NSA, and he started leaking it to Julian Assange, right? Yeah, that's right, Assange, Julian Assange, WikiLeaks. That's right. See, just like that, and go back and recall it. Excellent job. So that's one, and if you think about that, both of those guys probably have had a hard life since then, and I don't feel sorry for either one of them. What about the Equifax data breach? What do we know about that one? Was anybody?
Yeah, practically everybody.
Yeah, yep.
That
so
had credit.
Anybody who had credit, which was everybody who's anybody, right? We trusted Equifax. And there was a settlement of close to $600 million and free credit monitoring and identity theft for, I think, 36 months for that. But in that particular case, yeah, I think you did get like $1 because there were so many people that were affected by that. And if I recall correctly, I was one of those people. Yeah, so we use a tool called we paid for it. It's called Dehashed. This is what we typically will see for breaches, and so services like this are available, and you pay to play, but we oftentimes will get alerts for any of our clients that we're watching for a nominal fee per month. You can go in and check that out. I don't want to put in my information here and show you guys what I got going on, but this is a pretty good tool that for a monthly fee, they will send us alerts, plus we can search and be proactive about it as well. What about this Facebook the Cambridge Analytica. Yeah, and if you remember, this was it wasn't Facebook didn't consider it a breach at the time. One of the things that they did come out and say is that the sharing of information was there was far too many fields and documents and information that they allowed partners like Cambridge Analytica to access and consume. And then what Cambridge Analytica did is they would going in and harvesting a bunch of data from millions of people's Facebook's account. It's reported that both political parties were ousted and 50 million Facebook profiles were harvested by Cambridge Analytica. Some of the people at the tip of the spear, at least according to what the internet says, is obviously Mark Zuckerberg had to go and testify in front of Congress for that. Ted Cruz was involved in that one way or another. Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump were all investigated as well. And so what ended up happening is Facebook locked down their API, their graph.facebook.com, and locked that down a little bit more to granular level security. And but yeah, there was quite a bit of it was a violation of privacy. They were consuming and mining data. Scraping the whole web, just like LLMs are doing right now. We told you, we shared it with partners. That's exactly what he went in front of Congress and said. That's what Zuckerberg went in front of Congress and said. These people consent to our acceptable use policy, and we had it written out. And then Congress came back, and when they were interviewing him, and they were like, "Well, nobody reads that. You're not doing enough here." And I don't know if there was ever any, other than locking down the API. I don't know if there was ever any monetary solution given out to people, that those 50 million people, but I doubt it. But it's comes down to data, right? And so these guys in the modern world are good examples of what we need to do as far as trying to protect asset. Okay, and so there's different ways that we can do that. There's pseudonyms and anonymizers that are out there that allow us to do things a little bit differently. You can try to make data look a little different, and we'll talk about transpositions and replacements on that. But oftentimes we see this as a way to kind of just obfuscate in a way of the data. But there's different types of data that are out there that we consider, and we've gone through and already talked about a few of these, including but not limited to the things that are sensitive within your organization, the PII, the PHI, which may be a new term that you learned. And here are some specific data types. So check this out. When we were putting together a lot of these case studies and notes, some of them were pretty alarming. One of them was this right here, the APTs. And that's the first time that we're going through and actually talking about advanced persistent threat. If you've never heard of that term before, typically that means that our adversaries have access to our networks and they stay on the networks undetected. Typically they stay low and they operate slow to not throw any alarms or trigger any alarms. And in this particular case, there was one that came to life in 2013. That's when we first started seeing these APTs, where my background in doing some research on this was the academic system over in China. If somebody was majoring in information technology or cybersecurity and you wanted an undergraduate degree and or upper division like master's or a PhD, what you had to do was you would have to break into a company in the United States. And this was one of the first that we started to see this happen, was back in 2013. So 141 companies, 20 major industrial components, 6.5 terabytes of data. And it's kind of sickening if you think about it, because many of these were defense contractors who had, it is a senior design, pretty good one too. But, just kind of promoting that tells you who we're up against, because here that would be illegal for us to do that. Whereas over there, they're encouraging them to do that. So we move off of that first one that started to be recognized back in 2013. And we've gotten up close to, and probably over now, the 30 mark. But there are nation state actors, there's threat organizations that are out there, and most of them are our adversaries. And each one of them brings a specific tool set with them that is nefarious and pretty clever. And I think a naive approach is that for them, or for us, to think that they aren't as smart, or in some cases smarter on certain things than us, it just kind of brings it into perspective of what that looks like. So when we talk about data, there's three different states of data. There is data at rest, data in transit, and data in use. So let's go through and just talk about what the difference is between this. Data at rest typically means that we're not using it. It's on the medium, the actual medium, and it's not currently being initiated or activated. Data in transit typically means it's going from point to point. It can be wired or wireless. And then data in use typically means it's running in cache or VRAM of some kind, or RAM, right? And so the three of these are components that make up the states, quote unquote, states of data. And so great chance you will see these three on your exam. It may only be one question. It could be three questions. But I'm going to say 1 to 3 questions that you'll see on the exam. For these right here. So for each of these, what is a countermeasure that we could put in play for each of these? Maybe full disk encryption using something like BitLocker, Veracrypt, Clevis Tang. But what about data in transit? What could we do for data in transit? How would we be able to protect that? VPNs, TLS, SSH, armored truck. That's funny. Armored truck. That's funny. Yeah, those are all ways that we could. IPsec, good. Yeah, and what about the data in use? What would be a good way for us to protect the data in use? Yeah, and so basically encryption, but it's a little bit more granular for each one of these. Volatility would be something that we could potentially use if we had some money for the data in use as well. So here's an example of what the data in main memory that's collected with cryptographic keys stored in live systems looks like. So what we've done is taken a look at how data was exfiltrated and put that together. So Here we have a Windows image, and we're trying to find some of the RSA keys for that Windows image, looking at a grep command from SSH, and being able to look into the bowels of this main memory and kind of reverse engineer, if you will, those keys as the data was exfiltrated. In this particular case, we could then take this and try to see if we can get access to it. And so it's important for us as data engineers and security professionals to go in and try to practice what we preach. But with assets, we can classify them to make it meaningful and to ensure that things are not leaked. One of the things that we want to try to do is practice DLP, or data loss or data leakage prevention, DLP. For the purposes of our exam, data loss prevention is the way that they look at that acronym, DLP. And it's rearing its ugly head again. The CIA triad comes back into play here and gives us the type of protections that are needed whenever we put these controls or enforce these controls for asset security. So clearly marked hardware, making sure that it's stored correctly. What about SD cards and micro SD cards? How do you clearly mark those? So usually we put it in a little plastic container that can have a label on it. But whenever we're dealing with emails, there's different ways that we can protect that information to ensure that data is not leaked. And if you think about it, what controls can we put in place to make sure that it's protected in all three states of its use, right? So it's data at rest, data transit, or data in use. And so by throwing labels and policies on each of these data types, it allows us to try to control them as much as possible. Now, this has been the first time that I saw sensitivity labels was just before COVID. It was in 2019 when Microsoft first released some of their protection mechanisms. What a huge undertaking it is to put sensitivity labels on everything. And so within an organization, you think, on Word documents, on Excel documents, is it controlled unclassified information, CUI, if you're doing anything with, DoD, putting labels on everything and trying to control is a big task. And if you get used to it, it's easier. But the way that Microsoft has done it is they've segmented the different into silos, the different versions of government cloud computing. They have a GCC High, a GCC, and then regular Microsoft 365. So, being able to silo it like that and then putting labels on it allows you to enforce those security policies. And so here's just some of the different techniques that typically people will enforce through their security policy when dealing with the different classifications of information. I'm not going to go through and read each one of these. You guys can look at the slides, but it's various levels of rigor with each one of these as you're going through and enforcing these, right? It starts with nothing down at the bottom in public. AES 256 encryption for sensitive information. Moves up the food chain to more and more robust to finally things that are super secret. You want to make sure that you control it and you're encrypting it. Some more examples here that I put on here. There's tons of we could even throw in MGM was a big one. I think that was about around a year ago, maybe a little bit longer now. But it just seems like every time we turn around, people can't be trusted with our information. And so there is a technique that is called credential stuffing. Credential stuffing. And anytime that a credential that you have, like a user ID and password, and I'm not calling anybody out here, but anytime that there is a user ID and password, I was reading an article and it said something crazy about 70 some odd percent of the people that were surveyed use the same user ID and passwords for multiple accounts. Now, I'm not necessarily saying password. What typically we see is that, somebody's got a Gmail address and they're not using open authentication to authenticate through Gmail, but they're going through and they have the same password that they think is secure, maybe 12 characters, bumpy caps, being able to have all of the bells and whistles on the password, but using that not only for one site, but using that across all the sites. So, if you're using it for PayPal, in this example right here, if you're using it for PayPal, what are the chances that you're using it for everything else that you have, like Citibank, eBay, and Amazon? Well, 70% of the people out there that were surveyed on this is absolutely mind-blowing that many people utilize it. But it comes down to some of the tests that we would do at NASA, just physical tests, is most people are right-handed, so we would go around and look under the mouse pad. We would look if a sticky note was on their screen. We would look in the right-handed drawer to see if somebody would actually write down passwords. So it's similar to that concept where if one of those is compromised, and it doesn't have to be just these four, it can be a smaller fish in the pond that's compromised. Then if you're using that same one for each and every your credential stuffing essentially, then you may be in trouble. And so when I first started to hear about this, what I did is I kind of just gave in and started using two-factor with Google and using the Google Authenticator and getting a one-time password. And for me, using open authentication on any website and transferring the risk to Google. Because if Google gets compromised, we're all in trouble. So relying on people like us that work for Google, in my opinion, I'm using open authentication to try to get away from doing something like this. But there's some different tools that attackers use, but also the white hats use. I showed one earlier, the dehashed right here, if you recall. So the attacker is able to somehow compromise these credentials. Then they go out and create a botnet, and they're able to, hopefully, in their opinion, they're able to go in and be able to go out and get access to all of your money or whatever you're logged into with these other things. So that's called credential stuffing. We've seen this on, we had a boot camp, I think about a month ago. One of the people that took the boot camp said that they had credential stuffing on there, but then all the rest said that they did not have. Everybody who I talked to, at least, said they did not have credential stuffing. But what we need to do is we need to try to mark sensitive information by using different techniques that are in data loss prevention. Yeah, and so the idea is that with tools like Microsoft, you can actually with the DLP and other tools. There's one that was called Prevail that kind of started out the box with CMMC pretty quickly. And so people would buy that software. It was essentially just a secure email system, was used for just CUI information. But with DLP, typically you can put the sensitivity labels on there, and then you track where it goes within the organization, which is kind of cool. And you can recall it and destroy it as well, kind of like the old BlackBerry kill pill, where you just push a button and it deletes everything. And the first time I saw that, like I said, it was about 5 years ago, and it was really neat. We do that for a lot of our clients in the defense industrial base. So how do we store sensitive information? Well, I think the easy things that, not easy, but the things that you guys probably already are familiar with are lock safes, secure facilities, and restricting personnel, maybe clean rooms or something like that as well. But all of these ways typically are enforced in best practices whenever we're trying to prevent data loss. Typically, there's some sort of encryption that's associated with it. One of the things that is kind of neat, if you've never read it before, is the NIST 800-88. And it gives you 3 different sanitization methods. One of them, typically, we see on the test: purging or degaussing. And from those, you can kind of get some ideas of different components or tools that are used for being able to sanitize each one of them. But at a high level here, typically you will see the clearing of information. Usually these are rewrite new values. Usually the values are zeros and ones. We actually wrote a Python script to do this for some disk images. We were paid to build the prototype, and we found that it took 12 times for us to overwrite to not be able to still pull data off of hard drives. 12 times. And I think that that's what the guidelines are as well for media sanitization within NIST 888, but also has been adopted for the DoD.